We have watched all of Scott Pilgrim. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything. I'll tell you when I'm going into spoilers. Did you want to talk about Scott Pilgrim?
I really loved Scott Pilgrim Takes Off.
Yeah.
I really loved it.
But you're leaving, so just you liked it.
Yes.
Would you say you liked it more or less than the movie?
I liked it more than the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Love you guys.
We did watch the entire season. Went into this expecting something totally different from what we got. And I think that's kind of the consensus with everyone that started watching this, that knew anyway about Scott Pilgrim. I was expecting kind of a one-to-one recreation of the comic. Like, I figured this was maybe not like exactly one-to-one, but you know, maybe a little bit more true than like the movie was. That's just kind of what I thought we was getting, and it is not at all what we got. I'll just say this. Okay, so just for anybody, if you've not watched it at all, I definitely recommend watching it. If you are a fan at all of Scott Pilgrim, if you don't like Scott Pilgrim, don't watch it. I mean, I don't think this is going to do anything to make you like Scott Pilgrim. This is definitely for the fans, I feel. We're newbies. But for people who don't like Scott Pilgrim, I don't think this is going to change your mind. I could be wrong, but I don't think it will. It is very different. It is definitely not just the movie, but in anime form. So if you were considering not watching it because you thought it was that, I definitely recommend you watch it. Now, that being said, the least you know about it, the better your experience is going to be. I would recommend everybody, if you've not watched it at all, to just go ahead and tune out from here and not listen to anything else I say. If you have any interest in watching it, don't listen to what I'm about to say. And I'm only going to be talking about episode 1, and then I'll go full on spoiler of what I thought about the whole series. So Scott Pilgrim dies in the first episode, and we kind of get like almost like a what if situation going on, where what if Scott Pilgrim didn't win the first fight? The whole first episode really plays just pretty much like how you would expect it to. It's a little bit different from the movie, but not so much. It just feels like an adaptation of the movie or the comics. And then we get to the fight and he dies. He's the first one to die. Matt Patel takes him down. Then the second episode kicks off and it's his funeral. So you're like I didn't know what was going on. Honestly, I didn't know, oh, is this just going to be like a one-off thing? Like, you know, they had to fill in some story elements for like a couple of extra episodes because there's only 6 issues. Like, is that what we're doing? No, it's not. It is honestly one of my favorite things that I think I've seen anyone do with a pre-existing property. I can't even describe the way it makes my brain feel. Like, it's just great. You know, it's really, really good. And like, I get why some people would hate it. Like, I understand why there would be people that are just not fans of how they decided to go about it. I can't imagine anybody that likes Scott Pilgrim would feel that way unless they really were just wanting that straightforward adaptation of the comics. But if you're open to just Scott Pilgrim existing as it is and whatever, like you just love the characters and you just want to see more of that, then I can't imagine you would dislike this, because it's incredible. Like just what they choose to do is just amazing, and I love it. I love it. I love it a lot. I can't really say more without going to spoilers, so I'm gonna check up on chat. That was insane when Matt Patel did what he did to Gideon, dude. Right? Like, I mean, that was the thing, was it wasn't even just Scott. Like, everything changed because Gideon was like the big bad, you know, and then Matt's just able to just take him down, and it's like, what the heck? Like I said, I can't really say much more because I don't want to spoil anything for this. It's definitely worth not being spoiled on. I'm gonna go into spoilers. I'm gonna give it just a moment, but I'm gonna be talking about the end of the series and why it made my brain feel so magical. Don't you think so, Maggie? So good. Okay, here it is. There's full spoilers. The fact that this is secretly a sequel is just wonderful. And it's not even really totally just a sequel. It could be like a multiversal thing. Like, it could be a sequel to the comics. It could be just a new story that isn't really a sequel to anything. Me personally, I like to think of it as a sequel to the 2010 Scott Pilgrim movie. That Scott, 14 years later, which is now, would have turned out to be an asshole, you know, because I feel like that's kind of where we were. Like, that's where the characters kind of were, you know, and the fact that they deal with, you know, some of the history of Scott Pilgrim now, you know, looking back at it, like there's some problematic stuff. I'm not saying anything that nobody else hasn't said already, but, you know, Scott's kind of a dick. Ramona is treated almost as if she's like a prize opposed to being a full-fledged character, and I feel like the show does so much to make Ramona just completely fleshed out and have her own arc and personality and story. I think my favorite thing about it is how the evil X's, how we deal with that whole thing. We don't fight. Like, I mean, there are fights, of course. There's some fights in it. But, like, Scott never has to fight the X's because we've learned in the 14 years since then, you know, since the first movie came out. Maybe it's just me because I was at the perfect age for like when it came out and when this came out. Personally, we all have to kind of deal with our bullshit and move on, you know, like fighting with it is one thing. And like, you know, winning Ramona, right? Like, that doesn't solve all the history and all the trauma and stuff that like you've had in your past. Like, just because you like kick the shit out of your ex-boyfriend, which could be necessary. And just because you do that, like, that doesn't mean that the scars are gone, you know? And I feel like this show kind of recognizes that and kind of explores that, you know, like Scott and Ramona, when it ended in the movie, like, it was not a happy ending. Like, I mean, it was, right? It was that you know, happily ever after ending that we get in all these fairy tales and stuff. But like, if you do continue on past that, like, of course they would separate. Like, of course they would not be happy together. I mean, they had good times, and Scott was definitely like, was way more obsessive, torn up internally to deal with it than he needed to be, right? Like, even Ramona's like, dude, you could have come back at any time, you know, like you didn't have to spend 10 years in a room alone. Like, you could have, instead of doing that, you could have just made things better. Because Scott never learned that, you know, like, sure, he learned the power of self-respect, right? Like, at the end of the movie, and that's great. But like, he never dealt with his shit. So I mean, like, you see how he acted with Envy Adams when he was first broken up with, and how that like devastated him, right? Of course, something would happen with Ramona that it wouldn't be perfect, and he wouldn't be able to deal with that because he never grew as a person, you know? The writer, Brian Lee O'Malley, like being able to accept that his characters, when created, were flawed. That, you know, it was more of just a surface level kind of thing. It was almost like Back to the Future and Back to the Future 2, where like Back to the Future ends and it's very materialistic, right? Life is happier because they have more money, because they have good stuff, right? And Back to the Future 2 and 3, they kind of re-examined that, right? And, oh, well, no, actually, you need to be able to grow as a person and not be an asshole and fall prey to being called chicken and stuff, right? And so like, they kind of fixed it in Back to the Future 2 and 3. And so I feel like Brian Lee O'Malley kind of recognized that. He recognized that the Scott Pilgrim cast of characters that he created were fantastic, but just not completely fleshed out. And this does that. I mean, the fact that we get an episode for each evil X and that Ramona makes amends with them. Like, it's not a fight, but it's like they just deal with it. They talk it out and find peace with their history, their shared history together. I think it's just so wonderful. And then to have Scott, to be able to grow Scott's character for us, because we're now looking at this from, you know, 14 years in the future from the original movie, right? To see like Scott needs to be a better person. He did not change enough. He did not grow enough. He didn't learn enough in the movie to be a better person. And so this Scott, the you know, Takes Off Scott, he gets to learn the mistakes of the movie Scott to become a better Scott. Right? We see him grow, and we see like the fact that him and Ramona have to fight together to defeat the future Scott. Like, I don't know. I think it's just so perfect, because it's like, it's a re-examining of the material while at the same time continuing the story and yet resetting the story from the original. It, like, this shit, I love this shit. Like, it hurts my brain even trying to describe what they did with this. But like, it's just, I don't know. I can't adequately explain just how much I love this. Who do we think Wallace is married to, by the way? Like, who do we think it is? Because it's somebody from Nintendo. So I mean, like, it'd be great if it was Reggie. I don't think it's Reggie, but that would have been so great.